when I'm selling, I don't want to do stuff more than once. And I found that, I'm running into challenges. And so there's three ways that we can deal with it. We can fix it, we can find a solution, or we can prevent it, right? And if we fix it, this is typically, I'll just break it out here. This is where I say, an amateur. So I'll give you an example. I worked at a college and people would come in, they want to go to school, they have a challenge with daycare. And we'd always go, oh man, this is another daycare challenge. So I would react, I'd be emotional, and I'd say, okay, well, that sucks, you need daycare. So let's think, what could we do? And we work through that problem. And you know what? We get good at helping them, and we just have to control our emotions because it's tough to deal with. The more you do it, you go, you know what? That's a pretty common thing I deal with. So when that happens, here's what I'm going to do. So you get really good at professionally providing an answer and helping them solve that problem on the fly. But that's where most people stop because they go, I just have my common answers, and that's where you get really busy doing this stuff all the time. When they say this, I say this. If you really think about anything in your business, every part of your business, when stuff happens, is there something we could have done back here that would have stopped this from happening, actually put us in a better position? So for example, daycare, I went, okay, well, let me contact all the daycares in my neighborhood, find out who's got positions open, make a list, have my strategic network all ready to go. Somebody comes in like, perfect. We deal with this all the time. Here's what we can do. I've got an opening here. How old is your kid? Here's what we're going to do. And all I'm trying to do is remove this barrier for them so we can focus on what we're doing. And it's not manipulation, it's actually service. And so this is where you go, I'm going to initiate and provide answers for this. And it positions you as an expert in your business. When you're running into this resistance, you're running into these challenges. What could you have created, built so that you don't have to sell? That's why pre-selling framework, if I have a YouTube channel, I have proof, I have a little bit of, case studies, like a testimonial, social proof. When they get to me, the resistance is lower. I can do whatever I want because they already know there's a trust that's innately there. If I start and they go, hey, so I heard you got services. What do you got? What are you selling me? That's a real tough place to start from, right? Or cold market. Kendall, thoughts? Let's roll.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think trying to or working to apply this to professional services, oftentimes it's, at least from a consulting succession planning perspective, sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I'm working with my attorney to deal with, this is a good question for you, Joe. Working with my attorney, I first want to address my estate planning, and then I'll get to you guys. However, from the holistic perspective of succession planning, what it makes sense is to say, okay, well, if you're working with your estate planning attorney, how would you, Joe, position, how can we get started now? Because that's a great thing that you're doing. However, you may want to wait because we may uncover some things that the estate planning attorney may need to implement. So how would you reframe that and help make that more of a winning conversation for someone dealing with that objection?
So if they say we want to wait, is that what's the
something that's common that happens is, I've been referred to you from a succession planning perspective.
Yeah.
However, I'm currently working with my estate on my estate plan with our attorney. Once we're done with that, then I'll come back and work with you. However, it really should be a yes and, because the estate planning attorney may not be uncovering a lot of the critical things that need to be integrated into that process. So how would you handle that?
Yeah. So that one is, you really want to sort of, with that, you'd sort of tend to that. You say, yeah, that's a pretty good approach. A couple things that I look at, there's some ways that we've done it in the past, and I'll show you some options on how this might work. It really depends on your timeline and what you're trying to accomplish. For example, so I would use a story. For example, I had a client that was doing something like that. And, often we think about these projects in sequence, but there's ways to do it in parallel, just depending on your time, depending on who's involved, the resources, and really make it so that what they're thinking about is already a good answer. It's an option. Not saying it's wrong. It's just something they've looked at, but they might not have seen other options. And you tell them an example. So one of the ways you could look at it is, if your time, let's talk about your timelines. What are you trying to accomplish in this? And what time of year is your business work and all this? Okay, so it sounds like you need to go from here to here, and the service that we're going to help you with looks like this. I also think that if we started on that now, we could put some stuff in place so that by the time you were thinking of doing this, you're already at this phase. But that would mean you'd have to do these things. So you might want to front load your efforts in this first phase so that you're in this place, and you start to get them to think in phases and options, not they're right or wrong, but that's where your insight as a service provider, helping them understand checklists, timelines, sort of evaluation. I never want to tell somebody what they're doing is wrong. Usually I'm right. But so, right. But I would say, let's look at it like, and now you're, instead of me versus you, I want to bring them around this side of the desk and say it's me and you versus this problem. And
Yep.
that's where, I'm not trying to handle their objections and convince them differently. I think through the collaborative conversation, if we both agree that the choice they made was the best one, then do it. But there might be a chance there's an option that we both like. And that's
Yeah.
all we're doing. If I don't see the solution that I have, I'm like, nah, I think you were right the first time. That's a great answer too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That answer that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, let's look. So yeah, questions help them getting cognitively frame the problem. I always say this: there's two pivots in any conversation. There's one, we miss an opportunity to ask a question. We're too busy sharing stuff. We're too busy. They say something, we go, yeah, and then we go here, blah blah. We go further. They say something, and it might be a hidden objection. It might be a hidden stall. It might be something that they're really stressed about that they just kind of mention. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the opportunity to say, hey, you mentioned this. Let me ask you a question about that. You said this and said this. Is this happening? So when that happens, what happens here? Who's involved? Oh, that sounds like this. And you go deeper and you might find exactly where you need to go. Because often if you get to the end of a conversation and they're like, okay, let me think about it, we'll go like this, and they haven't told you the thing that's really bothering them, you're going to lose that deal every day. The other thing that changes, I mean, I listen to sales calls all the time and I catch myself doing it, is information shared. It might be the best information you ever shared, but it could be at the wrong time. I call it the love triangle. It's between me, them, and the information. Too much information might make it so that they focus on the wrong stuff. Really about building trust. If you share the wrong information, or if you share a bunch of information, you haven't built the trust. They're going to love that information. They're going to take it back, and that's going to be their side girl, and they're going to deal with that information on their own, and they probably won't choose you because there's not enough value in that. And I'll give you an example. Kendall is my awesome guinea pig. Was it last week? We talked about, we want to find out about something. We want to build something. I'm like, why don't we reach out and find out from existing people we've talked to that information? And the key to that message was less is more. We didn't share any information about what we were asking them to talk about. We just said, here's something, we're working on this project. We need some insights from you. We're going to be meeting with the rest of the team. When's a good time for us to talk? And her conversion rate was through the roof. And all it counted was she took action, didn't share a ton of information, didn't open up room for resistance. And they were curious. They were excited. They were wanting to help. There was trust involved. The language was very conversational, and Kendall killed it. Great conversions. Great example.